Hello, this is Catherine from Accelerated Reader. Today I will be reading Chapter 3 from Zimbie by Surina Nel. Before I begin reading, I would like to give a big thanks to the author for sending me this book to read on my channel. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Chapter 3. A bird chirps cheerfully in the big old apple tree, decorated with dainty white blossoms. Bees zoom from one blossom to another. Red, the big ginger cat, sits on the fence post of the paddock adjacent to the stables. He grooms himself meticulously. Inside the paddock, James chats cheerfully to Prince as he systematically works his way around the old horse, brushing him thoroughly, removing all the winter hair. He brushes softly over the protruding ribs. "You are getting thin. I'll ask Dad to have a look at you." The old horse's head hangs low. His face is now mostly covered in gray. In the shadow, under the apple tree, Paddy lies sleeping. His ears wiggle every now and then, shooing a pestering fly. He lifts his head. His tail wags automatically when his eyes find James. He looks at him for a while, his eyes heavy with sleep. Soon he gives up the fight and lays his head down again. He falls asleep almost instantly. "Do you remember when you came here?" "I was only 4. James continues to brush Prince's mane. "Mom didn't want me around you. She was scared you'll hurt me accidentally. I knew we would be best friends from the beginning." James walks around to the front of Prince. He plays with the mane between Prince's ears. Prince nods. He has loved James from the first day. "You were brought here to be euthanized. You were too old," they said. "And here we are, 4 years later." Prince pulls James closer, his head resting heavily on James's shoulder. James swings his arms around the old horse's neck before he continues to gather all his brushes. "Come, boy, let me feed you." James leads Prince into the stable before he disappears into the feed room and exits with a bucket of oats in one hand and a quarter bale of alfalfa under the other arm. He feeds Prince and makes sure he has water before running to the house with Paddy at his side. They reach the kitchen simultaneously, out of breath. Their eyes are shiny with life and happiness. A week later, James leans back with his back against the old brown horse, which is lying down in the shade of the big apple tree. Paddy, the big gray Irish wolfhound, lies next to him. His big head is resting on James's lap. The book, Black Beauty, the biography of a horse, rests on Paddy's head as James is reading for both Paddy and Prince. One day, while our cab and many others were waiting outside one of the parks where music was playing, a shabby old cab drove up beside ours. James changes the book to the left hand. The right hand finds Paddy's head. The horse was an old worn-out chestnut with an ill-kept coat, and the bones that showed plainly through it. The knees knuckled over, and the forelegs were very unsteady. Prince stirs behind James, adjusting his position, his ribs showing, his coat not as shiny as it once was. I had been eating some hay, and the wind rolled a little rock of it that way, and the poor creature put out her long thin neck and picked it up, and then turned and looked about for more. James changes the book to the right hand, turns to the left, and looks at Prince. "Are you comfy now?" A sigh escapes the lips of the old horse. James strokes Prince's long thin neck as realization creeps onto his face. One more stroke before he turns back to the book. There was a hopeless look in the dull eye that I could not help noticing. And then, as I was thinking where I had seen that horse before, she looked full at me and said, "Black Beauty, is that you?" Prince's gray-covered muzzle touches James's shoulder. Paddy turns his head, looking at James anxiously. It was Ginger, but how changed! The beautifully arched and glossy neck was now straight and lank and fallen in. James looks up, deep in thought, and then looks at Prince's fallen-in neck. The clean straight legs and delicate fetlocks were swollen. The joints were grown out of shape with hard work. Prince's legs are tucked in under him. The fetlocks, covered in gray hair, are still like those of a young horse. The face, that was once so full of spirit and life, is now full of suffering. Prince listens with eyes half closed. A tiredness took over the spirit of his younger days, and I could tell by the heaving of her sides and her frequent cough how bad her breath was. James's mom, Gina, stares out of the window of the kitchen. His dad sits at the table waiting for the coffee to brew. Gina watches James outside under the apple tree reading to Prince and Paddy. He loves that horse so much. His dad scratches his cheek. A frown plays between his brown eyes, partially covered by his dark blonde fringe. It concerns me. Prince is living on borrowed time. He has been laying down a lot lately. Gina looks at Dad, a worried look on her face. How long? Gina proceeds to pour Dad some coffee. She adds sugar and milk and stirs it. 2 weeks, maybe 3. He battles to get up in the mornings. It won't be long. Gina puts a cup of coffee in front of Dad. Dad looks into her blue eyes, her black hair shiny. Thanks, dear. Gina smiles in acknowledgement and turns back to the window. We should talk to him, prepare him for what's to come. Dad nods in agreement. You are right. I will talk to him. Dad sips on his coffee as Gina turns back to the window, her one hand playing with her black hair, lost in thought. Stay tuned for Chapter 4. Don't forget to like and subscribe. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book. Thank you for listening.